You're watching India Today Global. This is the big news that we've been covering through the days since Pahalgam attack. There has been a massive escalation. There is no doubt about that. Pakistan has reacted to India's decisions. India took the first step. That is diplomatic isolation of Pakistan in many ways than one. We'll break it down for you, but there is more to come. It is not just diplomatic isolation or the diplomatic measures that Pakistan has taken. It is also about what is going to happen when India decides on the military measures. To discuss the military measures, I have with me Col Rajeev Agarwal. He will be discussing in depth and analyzing the entire situation. But before that, foreign envoys of various countries, select countries have been invited to the Ministry of External Affairs to share details and be briefed on the Pahalgam terror attack. They're being called in batches because not all of them can come together. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri himself briefing the envoys. And to discuss this and more, I'm being joined by our reporter Piyush Mishra, who's on the ground right outside South Block. Piyush, thank you so much for joining us. First, give us a lowdown on what's really happening there. The fact that Ministry of External Affairs is doing exactly what it did every time India has been faced with a terror attack from Pakistan.
Well, absolutely, Geeta. But this time, the country is very much serious after the Pahalgam terror attack. And what we are told is that the Foreign Secretary is briefing all foreign envoys who are in country. And according to our sources, more than 24 envoys have been called in. And this meeting began an hour back, in which one batch has already been briefed. Let me also try to show you visuals from right behind the place from where I'm reporting. That's the Ministry of External Affairs, where the envoys have been called in. They are being briefed about India's stance on the Pahalgam terror attack. And you can see as how security has also been briefed in and around this entire area. The second batch is now being called in. The first batch briefing has concluded. Also important to highlight that India is now briefing envoys about the kind of evidence which the country has been able to gather in the last more than 24 hours. It is also, according to sources, telling to all envoys the kind of involvement Pakistan has in Pahalgam terror attack and how India is retaliating, what kind of steps so far have been taken and what are in the pipeline. So there are multiple things on which the briefing is taking place. In batch-wise, Foreign Secretary is briefing all the envoys. As we are speaking, not only Foreign Secretary, but also Minister of External Affairs. S. Jaishankar is also present inside the Ministry of External Affairs headquarters in National Capital. Also, Geeta, just before this briefing, MEA, Minister of External Affairs, S. Jaishankar met with the President of India, and in that Amit Shah was also present. So before this meeting, we also saw a very important meeting taking place at the President of India office, where both the top leaders who are part of Cabinet Committee on Security, even they briefed President on the current situation. So we'll have to wait and watch what kind of actions the government is now going to take. But yes, as we are speaking, the envoys who are present in the country, foreign envoys, they are now being briefed by Foreign Secretary.
Right. We are getting information, Piyush, that about 20 to 25 envoys have already been briefed. And the briefing, like you said, is not just about what happened in Pahalgam. It's also about telling them why India is taking the steps that India is taking, Piyush. This is very important because in the region, there are stakeholders who want peace and stability, but Pakistan certainly is not a country that has projected itself as a country that wants stability in the region. In fact, if anything, it wants a destabilized Kashmir because that works to its advantage.
Well, absolutely. Like rightly mentioned, that Pakistan is denying its involvement, and this is the first time that we have got evidence of Pakistan's involvement in carrying out an attack against India. Earlier also been about 26/11 or about multiple terror attacks. We have shown the evidence to Pakistan, but every time it has denied, and this time also Pakistan has denied this. In fact, yesterday an official statement was also released when this horrific incident had come to the light, Pakistan had said that this attack has taken place because of India's own internal disturbance. Pakistan's Foreign Affairs Minister, in fact, he had also highlighted that the people there are not happy with the government there, and that is why such attacks are taking place. But we have got the evidence. The sources within the MHA have told us that yes, we have got the evidence which indicates the clear hand of Pakistan. The four terrorists who have also been identified, out of these four terrorists, two are Pakistani nationals. That is also the information which we have. So certainly there is involvement of Pakistan, and the kind of steps which the government is now further taking to deal with the terrorism. All these steps, and so far those have been taken about all these things. The briefing is taking place where all the foreign envoys are being briefed by Foreign Secretary. Geeta, also important to highlight that these meetings, hectic parleys are taking place in the wake of Prime Minister's strong message to not only the Indian citizens but also Pakistan and especially to the global community that we will not let terror go unpunished. We will take a strongest possible decision. We will track the perpetrators and punish them, and not only the perpetrators but also people who are working behind this. A strong worded statement was given by Prime Minister after this meeting is taking place, and before this meeting, Foreign Affairs Minister S. Shankar was also there in the meeting with President of India.
Right. That exactly are the words that we're going to take away and pay attention to, because Prime Minister Modi made it very clear that these are diplomatic measures, but military measures are going to come soon. That of India's choosing when it comes to place and time. Piyush Mishra, thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep dipping into you because this is a developing story. Keep joining us here on India Today Global, because we will be bringing you all the news and exclusive details on what's happening on the ground. Piyush, thank you so much for joining us. We are shifting focus, staying with the story. Joining me now again is Colonel Rajeev Agarwal. We will be talking about the statement that Piyush mentioned, Colonel Agarwal, of Prime Minister Modi. He spoke about diplomatic measures and he said, but that is not all. India will respond befittingly so on a date and time of its choosing. That certainly means military measures. What, according to you and your assessment, could those military measures be?
Yeah. So firstly, thank you, Geeta, for having me on the show. And this Pahalgam massacre, which happened on 22nd of April, it has outraged all of us in the country. And there's a sense of anger, there's a sense of revenge, and there's a sense that something needs to be done now so that, there is no future Pahalgam ever in India. And that is why we saw the slew of measures that have already been initiated. The first set of diplomatic measures were announced after the CCS committee meeting yesterday. And today we saw in Madhubani, when Prime Minister was talking, how angry and how outraged he was even when speaking. And you must have noticed that a section of his speech he gave in English, which was directly addressed to...
We all noticed that.
Yeah, so it was addressed to the global audience. And he made it very clear, these diplomatic measures, etc., are only the start. And the terrorists, as well, a very important point, the backers will not be spared and be hunted down to the ends of the earth. That is exactly what he said, if I can quote unquote him to the words. So that is what is there. And I have no doubts that, this time India is not going to leave it at a Balakot, because I've said it all along and I wrote it yesterday also, that Balakot had a limited shelf life. It had a limited deterrence, capability. And as the time and narrative passed, it died down. So today I hope India, its leadership and its military has learned that a standalone Balakot will not work. You have to keep the pressure up. You have to keep the head of the snake down and never let it up to even think of a future Pahalgam again.
That's a very important point you make, Colonel Agarwal, and I meant to ask you that a surgical strike on particular areas is not enough. Prime Minister Modi today also said that all those areas that are harboring terrorists will be razed to the ground. Are we looking now at a limited conflict with Pakistan? Because this is escalation. It is not about having 30 official staff at the High Commission, because you need communication lines open. That's what most of the senior diplomats have been saying, that High Commissions are never shut down, only because you need the communication lines open even during conflict. But are we headed towards, or should we be headed towards, a limited conflict?
So, Geeta, I mean, there are a number of options from the lowest level of spectrum to the highest level of spectrum. Lowest level of spectrum, I would say, are, small tactical level, team level operations which happen across the LC, and they are an ongoing things, whether it is a exchange of small arm fire, whether it is small team operations, etc. And to the end of the spectrum, where you have a full scale military operations. Now, coming to the point that you said about Prime Minister saying that the terrorists, places where terrorists are being harbored will be razed to the ground, I absolutely, agree and endorse with it. You would have seen every time there's a briefing by the intelligence agencies, they very clearly define how many terrorist launch pads are existing and identified across the LC. 40 are
Yes.
there, 38 are there, 42 are there. What are we doing about it? Why are they existing despite us knowing? Will Israelis ever leave a Hamas operative known to them, alone without being targeted? Never,
Exactly.
because that is the right of existence. Today we have made our right of existence as a thing of ease. That terrorist camps, till the time they are existing across the LC, whether it is 5 kilometers, 2 kilometers, or 20 kilometers from the LC, it is fine till the time they infiltrate. That is not acceptable anymore. It may have been acceptable, but Pahalgam has told us that it cannot be acceptable anymore. We have to be proactive. We have to be preemptive. The head of the snake cannot be allowed to rise again.
That is a telling statement that you're making. But does India have the wherewithal, not just militarily, intelligence-wise, support from the international community? We were just talking about how foreign envoys have been briefed, but does it have the backing? I ask you this is because we will be coming to the Indus Waters Treaty and the role China could play in it. But having a neighbor such as China, keeping all that into account, do we have the wherewithal and the bandwidth to have an Eastern Front and a Western Front opened?
So, Geeta, Eastern and Western Front, when we are talking of a full scale, a military operation, and we are not talking of that as of now. When we are talking of the terrorist camps, there are two things that are very distinguished apart from a military operation. One is that it is across the LC and it is not across the border. And line of control is always a
Okay.
contested
Yes.
territory. Secondly, till the time you are targeting terrorists or terrorist camps and you have evidence to support it, everybody in the world is going to support you, because everybody in the world understands the scourge of terror and the kind of chaos that terror across the world has caused over the decades. So
But
these are two very important things that we have to keep in mind. It is across the LC, and it is specifically a clearly identified terrorist launchpad or a camp. You're not targeting Pakistan military. You're not targeting Pakistan's civilian infrastructure. You're not targeting Pakistan's any other high value infrastructure or targets. It is purely terrorist camps and terrorist launch pads.
okay, that's one way of looking at it. The other one, if India takes out terror launch pads, it would mean a debilitating impact on those terror organizations, but briefly so. And I say that because and we're not talking Pakistani military who are actually the real leaders, but the faces, the ones who control, like the Hafiz Saids, the Masood Azhars, Sayyid Salahuddins, they're protected by the state. In fact, Hafiz Said makes sure that he stays within the civilian community so that there can be no bombing there can be no attack there. Are we also looking at very specific taking out of individuals when it comes to Pak terror?
Yeah, so Geeta, see, there are a number of kinetic and non-kinetic options that India will exercise. It is not going to be purely diplomatic measure that it has announced and summit has been announcing. It will not be purely economic measures which will follow suit, and it will not be purely terrorist camps and terrorist launchpad. It will be a combination of everything. And within that combination of everything, what you said, what is known as targeted assassinations of high-value targets, that may be a possibility. And we have seen, I follow more of West Asia, so I quote West Asian context of often. What Israelis did to the Hamas chief in Tehran, in the most highly secured area next to the supreme leader, he was assassinated. How they
Yes.
assassinated Hassan Nasrallah of Hezbollah. Today,
Yes.
the technology, the surveillance means, as well as the targeting means, have become so complex and so sophisticated that if you have the correct intelligence inputs, you do not even require the operative to be physically there when the thing has to take place. So, yes,
Which brings me to a very pertinent question then, Colonel Agarwal. In all this, it is a terror attack. It's a very sensitive situation right now. But the question needs to be asked. Was there an intelligence failure on India's part? Weren't there enough security personnel, as some generals have been saying, that why was there a reduction of number of troops in Jammu and Kashmir? How do you look at internally? One has to look at what Pakistan has done, and we'll continue that conversation. But internally, is there an introspection that there was an intelligence failure or a security lapse here?
I would not go into those issues right now, but yes, it is suffice to say that two things that happened. One was the two VIP visits that were taking place, Modi going to Saudi Arabia and once coming to India, plus the speech that was given by the army chief Munir 3 or 4 days before this attack took place. To my mind, some chatter would have taken place, and it should have ideally been picked up.
Yeah.
Whether we failed in picking up the chatter, or it was, it was there, but it was lulled into the normal kind of chatter that was there, that we can't discuss right now. It'll be
Too
too
premature.
premature to talk about it. As far as the deployment of soldiers and the security forces are concerned, we have to understand that it is a dynamic kind of a deployment. The deployment happens based on the requirement, the security assessment that is carried out. And there is no way that any armed forces or any security forces can, be present 24 into 7 everywhere along the territory. And also, you have to see that Pahalgam is not along the line of control. It is
No.
bang in this center of the Kashmir Valley. So, you cannot say that the security forces were not very, available, deployed on the line of control, and Pahalgam was a line of control. No, it is in the heart of Kashmir. So,
Well,
you have to give.
they entered and walked that far within Indian territory. That also is a question.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But coming back to Pakistan, you mentioned the army chief, but the premise, Colonel Agarwal, was set up after the Jaffer Express and the
Yes.
DGISPR's press conference. That was a telling press conference. He squarely blamed India. The Foreign Office squarely blamed India for Jaffer Express, and he'd also spoken about how there is going to be retaliation. How do you read that press conference? Because everybody's been talking about Asim Munir. Nobody's looking at what the DGISPR said.
Absolutely. I mean, there have been a number of, embarrassments for the Pakistan Army in last few years. We remember how the Karachi naval base was attacked by terrorists. One school was, I think, targeted in Islamabad or somewhere. But this Jafar Express was unique and unprecedented. I have at least never heard of a train being hijacked. We hear of planes being hijacked.
With security personnel. I mean, they were most of them were
Yes,
security
a
personnel.
military train being hijacked, taken off to a place, and then soldiers killed in cold blood. I mean, this was not
Unheard of.
only unprecedented, but embarrassment beyond description. And you and I know that for anything that happens in Pakistan, which is a huge embarrassment for the army, the fallback action is always India and Kashmir. And so it was building up. Plus, you have to also see what is happening elsewhere. In Afghanistan, Pakistan is having a lot of trouble. They have been having border skirmishes. 3 times Pakistan has launched airstrikes into Afghanistan. And just 2 days before this Pahalgam massacre took place, Pakistan had forcibly expelled all the Afghan refugees across the Durand line. At least, I mean, it was ordered, whether they actually moved out or not. So Pakistan is having a lot of trouble in house within Pakistan, and here we are not talking at all about what its economy is doing. I'm just giving you 2 or 3 basic major issues which tell us about how precarious the situation was for the army, and they had to regain their self-esteem and prestige. And what better than to have Pahalgam?
Well, absolutely. But let's talk about the measures. We will again go back to the military conversations, but and the brass tacks of it. But Indus Waters Treaty, Pakistan has called it an act of war should India stop the water flow. The Indian side is very clear. There are international laws in place. That's why they've been very specific in saying that they're putting it or keeping it in abeyance for now, that it is not scrapped or suspended. But are we looking at a conflict with Pakistan not to do with on-the-ground forces or how India carries out strikes on terror launch pads, but that Indus Waters could become the central focus of India-Pakistan conflict here?
So, Geeta, I am not an expert on the Indus Water Treaty, etc. But this much I know that, Indus Water Treaty held in abeyance or being revoked, the effect is going to take time. And I know that we have been, building dams, etc., storage tanks, storage areas for water in case of such contingency, but that is a work in progress. How much we are able to divert the water and how much of this water can be stored is still a big question, which I cannot answer because I do not have the details. But yes, this would be one passive active measure which India would take, which would have active implications on Pakistan and Pakistan's survival, because it will have huge implications on the entire irrigation and agriculture in Punjab, which is the main, feeding growing area for the Pakistan's economy. And
well, it's
in
not
that
during
case,
the rainy season, but it's during summers that they do feel the scarcity of water flow and scarcity of water. In such a scenario, I'm just saying, in such a scenario, if India chooses to, uh, have those embankments and store more water and let very little go into Pakistan, then what could Pakistan's response be? Because let's not forget, there is an all-weather friend of Pakistan sitting on the eastern front of India, China, that controls a lot of and is the upper riparian state when it comes to Brahmaputra and the water that flows in. Will we see China come to Pakistan's rescue?
that's a $1 million question, whether China would like to get involved in the water treaty issue as far as Pakistan is concerned. It will definitely be Pakistan's ally in everything that is happening. Whether water issue will become a piece of alliance between Pakistan and China, and will China, because all the overtures that China has been doing for last about 6 to 8 months, it is not that India has bent forward to seek China's friendship or normalization. It is China who has come forward in most of the cases to seek normalization with India. Will China like to go back on all the effort that have been put in the last 6 to 8 months? And is water issue critical enough between India and China for China to be involved in a issue between India and Pakistan? I mean, that huge cost benefit analysis will have to be done at every end before we can discuss more on.
For me, I can't wrap my head around the fact that how does this attack benefit Pakistan? Or did Pakistan take things very lightly, thinking that they can yet again carry out Pakistani military establishment, that they can yet again carry out a terror strike with no consequences. Is that what the thinking was? What's your reading before I let you go on? Why did Pakistan do it at a time when they're suffering a massive economic crisis, when they're almost isolated, when they've been shamed by many countries in being the epicenter of terrorism? In such a scenario, and when you've seen attacks within Pakistan that Pakistan has not been able to handle and control, huge embarrassments for Pakistan and politically, look at the situation within Pakistan. In such a scenario, why would Pakistan do this? What's your reading?
So, Geeta, I wrote about it yesterday also. For Pakistan, it was now or never situation. The kind of development and normalization that is happening in Kashmir for last 4 years has been on a great pace, which is unprecedented. Last year, 2.35 crore tourists came. Last year, 2.2 crore tourists came, and the uptake in economic activity which has started this year, even with the summers not yet fully there in Kashmir. I believe some figures were saying 8 lakh people came for the Tulip Festival in Srinagar.
Absolutely.
So, if this kind of a normalcy existed for one more year, this summer, if it had gone, then the Kashmir narrative may have been lost forever, because it is a normal human tendency when economic prosperity comes, comfort comes, then you do not want to go back to the discomfort of what you were there earlier. So if the entire Kashmiri people get used to the economic progress, new institutions coming, Vande Bharat going to Baramulla and Srinagar across the Chenab River, 4-lane highway from Jammu to Srinagar, IMs being set up, hydroelectric projects coming up, private companies setting up bases there, Bollywood coming for movies. What else is required in Kashmir? It would have been gone to pre-90 days. And this is what I think was one of the, there were many triggers, would have been many triggers, but this was primarily the trigger.
I
And
suppose
I take you.
you're absolutely right, because look at the protests and hartals that took place within the valley. They were absolutely upset with this. Look at how the locals came and helped out, saying that, we are there for you, we'll protect you. Look at how one of the pony riders actually lost his life,
Yes.
saving saving the tourists he was with. I mean, this is Pakistan has to wake up and smell the coffee, wake up to see what is happening. But again, before I let you go, Colonel Agarwal, last question to you. There could be surgical strikes, limited ones, only targeting terror launch pads. But is this also a moment where India will say, if you are going to continue harping on Kashmir, make no mistake, Pakistan occupied Kashmir will soon be a center and focus for India when it comes to agenda Pakistan?
No, Geeta, I would put it differently. If we have learned the lesson this time, then we would not be happy with a surgical strike. We have to keep at it without any pause. It does not mean that every month or every week you have to launch surgical strike, but you have to keep the pressure on Pakistan in all manners, kinetic and non-kinetic measures, so that they do not get a respite. It cannot be a one-off, and it cannot be reactive. We cannot react next time something happens. We have to be preemptive, we have to be proactive, and we have to keep the pressure on them as much as possible, so that there is no way in hell that a future Pahalgam can ever be dreamt of.
On that note, Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep coming back to you for more analysis, in-depth understanding of what's happening and what military turn could India take. Thank you so much.